being a pilot right now is a bad choice, which in the moment, I think we all felt that. Every pilot just thought, why am I here?
Welcome to the Pilot Pro podcast, enabling doers like you to achieve your aviation dreams and become safe, confident pilots. In today's episode, we're going to be interviewing Michael Diamond, a 2,000-hour flight instructor who's just been hired by a regional airline and also is going to be flying for the Air National Guard. Thanks for joining us, Michael.
Thanks again, Justin. This is pretty fun. I love airplanes. And I love everything about them, and it's been super fun. So this is kind of a cool opportunity to chat a little bit about why the phrase "I love airplanes" seems so simple and rudimentary, but there's so much unpacking there with that statement. Yeah, so I am just shy of 2,000 hours, all acquired in general aviation, mostly as an instructor. And I have 2,000 hours because of COVID. I began my airline transport pilot training just recently on June 18th, and I completed my ATP CTP course in order to take my airline transport pilot written, the multi-engine, and I just barely took that and passed. Then I have indoctrination, the indoc class with SkyWest starting tomorrow. I was selected to fly the Embraer 175. I'm learning a lot more about it. I'll be more of a pro later, or maybe I'll never be a pro. But it seems like a cool plane. The automation and the, everything about the avionics and the systems in that plane I'm really excited about. And you fly that plane, correct?
I do. Yeah, the Embraer 175 is a really sweet airplane. I love, like you said, the avionics in it, the autopilot, it basically flies itself. It's got auto throttles. It's just a lot of fun. So you've instructed a lot. You say up just over 2,000 hours. You're starting with SkyWest now. So that's really good stuff. Sounds like things are actually starting to move along for you now that we're post-COVID.
Yeah, it feels like COVID never even happened. Currently, there definitely are some signs that it for sure happened, but it is moving very fast. The class that we're in now is the second class after this first group of students that were moved into the two different regional jets that the company that I'll fly for uses. And so I'm the second group in, and this is the biggest class that they've had in a long time. Even they're just trying to catch up with the demand. I think that they are behind the curve. The whole company and all the companies were essentially turned off to hiring. In fact, they were probably putting more efforts onto finding resources and figuring out methods to keep pilots on back burner and keep pilots around and not furloughed. And now it's full on hiring. I flew to training and sat in front of someone who was moving from my company to a major airline. He was one of the first ones back. He said he's the first classes back after the COVID delay. And so it's full stream. It's moving so quickly. And how many pilots they've hired after me for this regional company goes well into almost December. And we find ourselves in July. Yeah, they're stacking it up and preparing for the future. So when we heard about the pilot demand and the imminent pilot shortage, which was then just turned on its head because of COVID, blink and 14 months pass, and we're back to that same demand, if not more, and a larger shortage of pilots because of the effects of COVID. You're burning the candle from both ends. You're losing retired pilots that would have retired at 65, retired early, so they're gone years earlier. 2 to 3 years is what I've heard. And then you have pilots that never signed up for flight school from the other end, from the very square one. They're out of here. My flight school alone during COVID had a 40 student lineup quantity, somewhere around there, plus or minus.
Wow. And
it was whittled down to 6, 8 during COVID, and then we bounced back, and now we're getting back to normal numbers. And so if we felt that, that there's every other flight school out there that just lost all of their student load, because anyone with a short-sighted vision would say, oh, being a pilot right now is a bad choice, which in the moment, I think we all felt that. If there was like a good 3 months there when every pilot just thought, why am I here? It's funny because I wasn't even into my, jet flying career yet, just still flying general aviation, reciprocating engines. And there's a good pilot that I know from United who said, the airlines is sort of like the best party you've ever been to. But every couple of years, the police show up, break it up, everyone goes home sad. And then it all starts coming back together. The next day, someone starts rocking a beat. And you're like, okay, I'm going over there. And then they invite their friends. And it's like it's a party again. And this was the fastest recovery, I think, that they've ever seen, which is crazy because it's also the fastest decline they've ever seen. So it's interesting to be a part of it right now.
It really is. It's been funny to watch. I remember that point, March, April of last year, 2020, when we all felt that way, like, oh crap, maybe I need to find a different career. I need to be doing something else. And I had several people reach out to me saying, like, is it even worth pursuing this anymore? People that were instructing, that were well on their way. And now we're on the other side of it and looking at it like, oh, well, obviously this is a great time to be getting into the airlines, to be getting into flight training, wherever you are, it's really good. I have kind of some interesting numbers for you, and maybe you've seen this, but there's a study done just about 2 months ago by industry forecaster for aviation, and they concluded that worldwide, a year and a half from now, so January 2023, we're going to be 19,000 pilots short. And then by the year 2029, so about, 7.5 years from now, we'll be 60,000 pilots short. So that's even including all of the people that were going to be training and everything. They're just forecasting like, we cannot keep up with the demand and the retirements and everything. So it's a great time to be getting into it.
I feel the same way. I've seen those numbers, but those details are mind-blowing. That is so crazy. I hear about it now. It's mostly just connecting the dots because I'm not an economist and I'm not plugged into the forecasting of these major multi-million and multi-billion-dollar companies. You just can read the writing on the wall when you hear that major airlines are canceling flights because they can't staff. And it's due to the flight attendants and it's due to the flight crew, first officer, captain, or whomever you're looking for. You got to fill those roles before you send someone up flying. It's not, the regulations just say, we're short of flight attendant, send the flight anyway. No, there's like laws that say there's got to be 2 pilots up front and there's got to be so many flight attendants for all the passengers on board, and there's a need for sure. I feel like I got in at just the right time. I always say, I should have done this earlier. Yeah, I mean, hindsight's 2020. I could have done it when I was 21, 22. Currently, it is just a wildfire of travel. And so it's yielding the crew to fill those spots. And so, anyway, that's where I'm at now. I'm on my way, feeling good about it.
So you mentioned earlier that I think you said your thoughts are airplanes are cool. Was that what you said?
Yeah.
I want to kind of go back in time a little bit here. What is it, growing up as a kid, did you have any like aviation influences in your life? What led you to that thought of, airplanes are cool, I could do that?
So I grew up next to Hill Air Force Base in Utah, and Hill is awesome. Right next to the mountains, you've got the pattern flying just right next to the bench. They're below the peaks, sometimes going through the canyons other times, and it was just a lifetime of F-16s overhead. And every once in a while I've seen a group of A-10s, F-15s, and then now, oh my gosh, the list goes on and on. Obviously the F-35s are very entertaining, and all those jets flying in and out, and that's just enthralling. When I was 21, I thought about doing it, but I wear glasses, and so I kind of self-disqualified myself and then looked into the commercial side. Was scared away because of the cost of school, and then hearing also about the road to climb with minimal pay to start and getting out of that financially, it just scared me, and I didn't think it was a wise thing to do. That's all changed now. But even before that, growing up, watching those jets overhead, My dad at his business had a coworker. They were the owners of the business, and they had an airplane, and they were going to teach themselves how to fly and figure it out. And they hired an instructor, and to kind of share costs, they said, "Who else wants to do this?" And my dad's like, "I'm in." And he did a lot of training, got about 80% the way through his pilot's license, because for him it was essentially free. He was paying for gas, and it was just good time. And they took me on a little flight. He was still a student, and then this flight instructor was on board, and I went with my brother. My brother is a smart cookie. He's an ER doctor, and he was terrified of the plane. And I pridefully was so jazzed because I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I think I was about 6, 7, or 8 years old. I can't really remember, but it was the coolest thing. And that was the seed that was planted. I was like, I just been looking up ever since. That one ride. That's what it was like. Essentially, like an introduction flight for me. It's all I needed, just because I was always watching them, and then I got to get in one. So, you go through life, and life pulls you this way and that way, left and right, tugs and pulls and pushes. And then I ended up actually going to college and getting a full career after I self-disqualified myself back when I was about 21, 22 years old. Bumped into a lot of pilots. I was living in Guam for a job when I was about 28. And I had a full career in sales and marketing, and I graduated in public relations and advertising, and I was pursuing that pilot after pilot. It was so random, just meeting the coolest people. A few of them explained this and that, but what really stood out to me was two big changes, was financing for flight schools is readily available now, more so than it ever has been. If not, it's never been available, other than getting loans through large Part 141 colleges. And so now it's available all over the place. Second thing was the pay right out the gate. And that's not to say about your climb from 250 hours to 1,500 hours, but starting at airlines at 1,500 hours with your airline transport pilot, that pay has changed. And I even at my job, right, as an instructor, I was making decent money, enough to feed 2 kids and my wife and myself. And so I switched careers. Did it just 180 degrees. Good thing my wife is like super chill, because I can't believe we did it, And it was good. We found financing. I had saved some money, paid for school a different method, and still figured it out on my own, and then made it happen. And it took me about a year to do all of my training, to get all of the certificates that I wanted and ratings that I wanted to become a flight instructor. And then I would have worked for about a year and a half to gain those hours, and then COVID hit. I had about 1,300 hours, so I was just like 200 shy of gaining the hours, and I actually had an interview lined up with a regional transport company, and all stopped. Big blessing for sure, huge bit of luck for me, I think, because then it gave me another, almost year, probably 10 months collectively, that I was able to continue to study and not get ahead of myself. Could have done it in the time that was allotted, but it was good. Really gave me the opportunity to enjoy instructing in general aviation. And all of my students were headed the same direction. Well, most of them, like 9 out of 10. Instructing was an absolute, right? There's so much freedom. Okay, we got to do this maneuver. Where do you want to do it today? Okay, we have to do this cross country. Where do we want to do it today? And definitely kudos to my flight school that allowed for that freedom. There's other flight schools that don't allow that, but it was so fun. Just a lot of cool trips, and okay, we got to check this box. Where do you want to do it? We got to check that box. Where do you want to do it? I'm sure you felt the same. You also meet a bunch of cool people along the way, which is where I met you, and you set the bar. So that's kind of where I find myself today, is going through, and that's where I'm at.
I really enjoyed flight instructing as well. You can have a lot of fun with it, and a lot of that does depend on the flight school where you're at. But I'd say for the most part, you have a lot of freedom, like you're saying, to go do a cross country to where you want and go see some pretty sweet little airports. Along that journey of getting your certificates and your ratings in flight instructing. What would you say, like what's a challenge or like a difficult part of the process that you had to go through? What was one of the big ones for you?
There were a lot of challenges, but again, it's so fun and so enthralling. Every bit of it, it was great, and we can go into that detail why it's flights is so good. But challenges with flight school is that there are a lot of options. No one way is the right way. For you personally, for me, like in a general sense, for anyone, you got to kind of pick what you want. If you want structure, if you want to be handheld, seek it out. If you want freedom to build your own schedule and study on your own time frame, seek it out. If you want to save money, if you want to spend money, if you want to go fast, if you want to go slow, you got to seek that out. My criteria was pretty simple, but my criteria was flexibility. I needed a flight school that could provide me the opportunity to go as fast as I wanted, and then if I wanted to like take a break and go on a trip with my kids or do like a bike race, or I just wanted that freedom. And I did. I found that with my flight school, and so while I was working through that as a student, as a learner, finding the information that you need to absorb, like the need to knows, because there's a lot of stuff in aviation that's fun, but it may not actually like get you the rating. It's just good to know, but it's like, yeah, learn that later. You try to learn it all at once and you'll break. You can't absorb it all. You'll go too slow. You gotta just absorb the need to knows. And so that challenge, I think, was alleviated with the correct sources. So knowing someone, or knowing that the flight school can be relied on, or finding some supplementary channels, like this one, to have that path of least resistance, and then build from there. Building that solid foundation of the basics, and then going from there. There's a lot of things that you got to know right off the bat: stick and rudder, regulations, safety, risk management, and you get into those details, and then great, and there you go. So here's a case in point of where I may have gone wrong. I was getting distracted by kind of convoluted sources. Is that I was about maybe 30 hours and into my private pilot's license. I got my private pilot's license about 45. I did it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but that's what happened. And I was at like 30 hours, and we were flying from Ogden, Utah to Burley, Idaho, and Twin Falls. Yeah, so it was like a kind of a dual stop on this cross country, and I was supposed to solo, and another pilot took a plane, and he was on a solo, and then anyway, it's a crew of us, and it was turbulent. There was a little bit of mountain wave, and I am doing like Mach 10. I am going as fast as I can. I can't remember why, but we land, and the other pilot's like, "Mike, why were you going so fast? It was so turbulent." I'm like, "What's the problem?" He's like, "Well, you got to know about maneuvering speed." What is that? I had no idea. And I'm like, how did I get 30 hours into flying and not know what maneuvering speed is? And it's like horribly awkward and embarrassing to admit this, but I'm doing like 5-10% over maneuvering speed through like moderate turbulence. Wow. I mean, should have known better. And it's the kind of stuff that can lead to some problems. And so it's like, I just needed to know the crucial things. And I think I was too distracted by like every detail of every facet of aviation. And so it's like, you got to know the basics. You got to know the crucial, most important parts first before you go like mobbing way too fast through turbulence. And so things that keep you safe. And so that was, I think, crucial part, is knowing like where to get information from and where to know what's important. And I think like a channel like this is probably a good place to start.
Definitely just take it slow, submerge yourself in aviation. Like there's a lot to learn for sure. You do your best to learn all the things that you need to, and then keep yourself as safe as you possibly can. So how is it, what made you choose the airline that you're going with right now? And you can be as specific or as non-specific as you want in saying who it is and whatnot.
Man, I was so new to all of this when I first started, because I was kind of paving the way for myself. I don't have relatives that have been in aviation. I don't have close friends, and the ones that did were military, and they got in a different way. But then I started to rub shoulders and find out, things like this. A bit of depressing advice, but is that every flight school, every flight company, every facet of flight is going to have some issues. And I think this is kind of true over all industries and all business, that you're just going to have issues no matter where you go. You just got to find that place with the least amount of issues. Like, what? That's a pretty pessimistic view of how to choose a flight school, how to choose a company. But there is some merit to that. And I think it's valid in your criteria of choosing company to work for or a school to use is for your certificates and ratings. So again, my criteria was flexibility, but then later I found out safety's huge. Safety's huge. Culture is huge. So how obedient is everyone? And why do they want to be obedient? And why do they love being at work? Again, obedience is going back to people adhering to structure, and structure was what maintains that safeguard for people making human errors or even planes, failing on you. Tricky part about planes failing is that you're flying when that happens, whereas a car just pulls off the road. So it's really important that they work all the way to landing. Emulating what I found in my flight school, I wanted to continue that with the company, and so I chose SkyWest as my regional to work for because of two things, is the culture and the safety. Every person that I met was safety oriented, and they were fun to talk to. They were humble, and that's something that I wanted to be a part of. I'm there now, immersed in the training program, and I feel that continuing, and I hope to see more of that. And I think that even if I ever choose to move on to a major or different company in the future, I don't know if future's way out there ahead of me, but if that ever happens, then that same criteria. People who want to be there, a good family, friend culture, and people who care about those with whom they work, and then the safety behind all of that. Now, again, later down the road, I'm sure I'm going to have more advice for my young, dumb self, one of which is profitability. And interesting thing about SkyWest is they were one of the first to pull profit during COVID, and now everyone's catching up. And even since, the very beginning when I first learned about them, hearing about the profits and their profit sharing with employees is just really exciting to be a part of. I'm sure you feel the same because that's your employer as well.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of those same things in the company, and that, I was kind of in the same boat before I went to the airlines. Like, I didn't know what I was looking for. Nobody really does unless they have somebody to kind of help guide them. So it's good to be with a company that does value safety, does value the employees. And I want to kind of step back and you've shared some advice that you would have for yourself or for other people going through where you've been. Is there anything else that if you could go back and talk to your younger self prior to becoming a pilot, is there any other advice you'd give yourself?
These are good questions, man. A lot of little ones, but you'll kind of figure that out along the way. The pinnacle of the 180 degrees that I took, and for some, maybe it's not. Maybe they haven't jumped into a career already and are switching. The pinnacle is just making that jump. It's a huge jump of faith, and there's a lot to dive into. I know a lot of people through my flight school that left careers to do this, whether it was in real estate or sales or accounting, computers, software engineering, all that stuff. You hear it all. There's so many distractions. There's so many what ifs and buts and things that will cancel out that decision. But you've got to do it. Money's a huge obstacle to this because this flight school is expensive, and because of the rise of demand in pilots and the creation of financing and the availability of financing, costs have gone up. And so it's only going up, and it's getting more and more expensive. So you got to just make the jump right away. You got to get in. Don't let financing be the hurdle. Get in and do it. I have a really good friend who jumped in on the financing program that was available through this flight school, and the interest rate was absurd. It was like, makes you want to throw up. Absurd. This is like way too high. Way too dang high. And over 20, 30 years, you're like, oh man, that's a lot of money. I'm paying that back. And so gets in, makes it happen, and then the market turns great. He refinances his house, pulls out some money on the house, and slashes that interest rate dramatically down. And it's what a wise, physical thing for him to do. And there you go. Now he's set. And he made that leap, and he's getting in, at ground level, and he's starting out when the wave is happening now.
Mm-hmm.
And all these projections of like pilot retirements, peaking at 2025, and you might say, oh, the timing's not right. I won't be ready to go get hired by all these big companies by then, 2025, 26, 27, when all these like retirements are going to peak and surge, if you will. Mm-hmm. Who's to say that demand would not go up so high that the amount of places to fill with all the newbies are going to be, numberless? And who cares about how many people are retiring? So it's a huge wave. It's a huge wave. The competition is great, causing a lot of stable benefits and day one pay rates that just make sense. And so SkyWest is huge. I definitely would recommend it because they allow you to become a cadet prior to being hired, which gives you a lot of benefits leading into your future. So that's big. But weigh it out. Maybe due to the domicile's location, something like that's not the best choice for you. So you'll choose the company that works best. But it's a huge wave. We're all surfing it right now.
I feel like that gives us a pretty good idea of your story getting to where you are now. You'll probably be at SkyWest for couple years, I would imagine. Where do you kind of see yourself 2,000-3,000 hours from now?
You keep asking the questions that I don't know the answer, so I have to dig. During COVID, I got really impatient 2 days into COVID because that's how I work. And I had a lot of influence from some military friends about the Air Force. And the Air Force has, 3 facets. You've got the active duty, the Air Reserve, and then Guard units. And so I had heard that the Guard units were most plush, and there's actually one here close to home. I've got nothing to study for because I had all the ratings and certificates that I needed in leading up to airline transport pilot. Not studying, so why not study something else? That's the smart thing to do. Just always study 24/7. And so I started studying for Air Force tests, and I took those and then applied. And I wasn't the only person who thought this way. There was a huge flux of other pilots that were applying to Guard units and Air Force Reserve units and to duty. But I had some connections and got to rush a base. We'll go meet people face to face and put a name to a face, and then got into some interviews and then got hired or selected to be a pilot for the Utah Air National Guard. So at that time, in 3-4 years from now, I'll probably be done with all my training, and I'll be flying dual roles with military and civilian side. So passenger transport and then fuel transport, refueling jets. So fortunately, I don't get to fly jets. I've been watching them since I was a kid, but I got to get pretty close airborne now in the KC-135R. And so that's my future. I'm doing it because I love flying. There's lots of ways to diversify yourself to grow your career if you don't want to stay at a very suitable regional with some safety and security in your job. If you diversify, volunteer, get your degrees, do other things, then put that on a very well structured resume and send it to some legacy airlines, and you'll get picked up, moved up, do the same job, get paid twice as much. But I just love planes, so rather than spending time, I already have a degree, so it's just like only up from there. So I'm looking to diversify my resume. So I don't know if I'll switch to another airline, major, or grab some sort of corporate job. I'm huge on quality of life. Mm-hmm. There's this constant back and forth, like a tennis game of pay versus quality of life, pay increase or make life better. And I've just never heard that conversation in any other industry other than the aviation industry, especially the airline transport. And I've kind of settled in to find out that I'm for sure on the side of quality of life. So time off is huge, and so I'm going to be seeking that out. And so I may have to grind for half a dozen years or a dozen years to make that happen. And then there'll be that point where worth enough hourly that I can work less. Rather than work more and make more money, I'd rather that's where I'm at. Just because there's so much in this life, mountain biking, road biking, running, hanging out with kids, boating. There's just so much to do. Flying planes is fun, but that stuff's more fun. That's where I think I'll be. I don't know, but the biggest thing, or I guess advice that I give to other people is to continue to diversify. We all know that a good pilot is always learning, so I hold that close to heart, and I think that that's would help anyone go far if they continue to get more ratings, make themselves more hireable, more valuable to a company with other things other than just the basic check boxes. Like ATP, done. That's all I need. I don't need anything else. There's a lot more to do in life.
Well, it sounds like it's kind of come full circle, from looking up at the F-16s and F-15s and the F-35s to now, you're with an airline and going to be doing some flying in an Air Force reserve role. So that's pretty cool. And from what I know, the airlines work pretty well with like a reserve, like Air Force reserve pilot schedule, that they pretty well give you that time off, and they're a good fit together.
Military is not for everyone. And I think even my character, it is may hesitantly sync up with the way the military works and how they work and why they work. But I'm just patriotic as all get out, and I think it's worthwhile to put that effort in. So now, because of that service, there are laws that allow you to protect your employment, and protect certain things like pay upgrades. You can't be withheld from a lot of that stuff. So not only protected legally, but also the mentality of a company like SkyWest, and there's a lot of others out there, do happily and willingly work alongside of pilots like myself and the circumstances I will be in the future. So that's just one form of diversification, but I think it starts at a basic level of getting your college degree, and then continuing volunteering can help that degree, diversifying your aircraft type hours, and also the fun things like your tail wheel. Tail wheel is, I only have 5 hours in the tail wheel, and I felt like 2,000 hours are worth all of that. Those 5 hours are very, very worthwhile. And, so flying fast planes, get in them, tail wheel, the tail draggers, high performance, high altitude, pay for it if you have to. You don't always have to bum those opportunities from people that go out and get it, save money while you're getting your ratings. So there's a lot of ways to get to where we're at, where you and I are at now. The biggest question is, how do you go from 250 hours as a commercial pilot to the minimum requirement for airline transport pilot, if that's where you want to go? And there's so many ways to do it. That's the biggest question. Like what flight school you choose, what airline you choose, what corporation you fly for in the future are sandwiched in that core of how do I pave my own path and become a 1,500 hour pilot and hit those minimums so that I can gain those ratings and move on to bigger things. That was hard. Leaving COVID out of it, even if COVID wasn't even a factor, that going from 250 to 1,500 is a huge challenge, super humbling. You can go from making, a 6-figure salary to becoming a flight student, and then you're a pilot trying to go from 250 to 1,500. That'll humble you, for sure. But put in the time, get paid peanuts, work long hours. Peanuts. What's lower than peanuts? I don't even know. Peanuts are good. What's with peanuts? I don't know. Unsalted peanuts? How about that? It's bad. So that's the huge question, and I can't answer that. I chose instructing because I love teaching, and I thought that was a lot of fun. There's a lot of freedom in it. We talked about some of the pros and cons, but that's a hard part. So there's a lot of ways to do it right, a lot of ways to do it wrong, but just get it done no matter what.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's so many different paths you can take, and choose the one that works the best for you, gives you the quality of life that you want and everything. So, well, we're gonna wrap it up here, Mike. But thanks for joining us for this episode of the Pilot Pro podcast. Is there any last words that you want to share with the audience?
Planes are cool. That's all I got.
Well, thanks, Mike. We'll get back in touch with you here in a year or two. Maybe have you back on the show. see where you're at, see how you're liking SkyWest, and how the industry is at that
thanks,
point.
Justin.
So, thanks, Mike.